which I think we all are privileged to actually have him here, because it's so important for the LGBT community to be actually recognised. But not only that, he's Indian. Yeah. Because before you start, I just wanted to say, a couple of years ago, I asked my, as a Sikh, I asked my priest, my Gyani, to say what happens when if there's two Indian or two Sikhs. This was when there was the same-sex marriage was happening, and he said, "Oh no," he said, "we don't do that because we're India, we're Sikh, we don't do that. It's only the Gore, which is it's only the white community that this affects." So over to you, Manjinder.
Thank you for your compliments. Being an LGBT activist here for you today, you know, you would think that coming out and being accepted and doing this kind of work was easy for me, but it wasn't. You know, I feared that I would be forced to marry a woman, or I would be disowned, or worse, you know, killed, or whatever could happen to me. So who am I? I'm a human rights specialist. I've worked for the UN, government, NGOs around the world. I've met Mr. Khalid Mahmood when I did a Sky News interview like a year ago about gay rights. And I'm also I'm a spiritual counsellor and a life coach. I decided to do LGBT activist work for South Asians in the UK because I got really peed off. Every time I'd come back from abroad doing human rights work, I would see faceless profiles of gay men and lesbian women on apps and dating sites, and basically they were just looking to sleep because they had to get married to a woman. People that I dated myself were marrying women. So all this was going on, and I was getting all these cases happening to me, and I was really peed off because no one was talking about it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing video vlogs, and one with my mum became famous. It's my mum speaking in Punjabi, it's got English subtitles. We had like millions of views. It was famous abroad in South Asia. It was on ZTV with Anila over there, and all sorts of other organisations. So it's with that, in that video, my mum talked about we talked about cases where members are married but still keep sleeping around on the side, and how it's harder for women due to the gender inequality, and they're expected to marry, to keep the family honour, and marry someone of the opposite sex. We've also got loads of marriage of convenience. Right? There's cases of, you know, men being married to women from abroad, they ruin their lives. There's a case of the gentleman from Warsaw who killed his wife in the incinerator because she found out he was gay. That is why I've written this book called Bollywood Gay, which is out this month, and it's a self-help with spiritual law of attraction principles in there, and there's a booklet inside. I do a lot of my videos, a lot of my activism in the language of like Urdu, Punjabi, and Hindi, and my booklet's 13 different languages of all around the world, Arabic, Hindi, etc. And it's you tear out and you give it to your parents, and it tells you what your sexual orientation is if you want to come out. The rest of the book is about how to actually empower yourself. So a lot of my videos, I worked for Sikh channel as well, and when I used to come back, I used to, you know, message all the Asian radio stations like Punjab Radio and say, can you talk about this, can you talk about this? So I was always on them. For Sikh channel, I was an out gay man. 50% of the people there were, you know, homophobic, but I still made programs on these issues. So that's what I do. And so I want to talk about why this all happens. So even before the conception of the child, Asian parents imagine and dream about the marriage of their child, the dream that they want them to have. Being LGBT is not even talked at all, because the child is expected to be straight automatically. There's gender inequality, women are treated as second-class citizens. There's gender binary, where men are all macho and women are meant to be all feminine. So anything in between that just won't happen. That's when you have domestic violence. For people who are trans, for example, they're completely ignored. In South Asia, we have the Hijra population, which now are reduced to begging and prostitution. They're ridiculed and feared. Yes, we have LGBT rights in the UK, but it's mainly for the white mainstream community. For the rest of us, there's nothing there, and especially for communities where they don't speak English. The role of guilt, shame, and worthiness plays a huge role, and people are pressured to get married. For LGBT people, if they don't come out, or even if they do, they still feel pressured to marry someone of the opposite sex because these things are taboo. So there's no stats on this, there's no stats on why someone committed suicide, why did youth suicide happen, was it because the girl was lesbian, was it gay? No stats, no nothing. Access to mental health is really bad for LGBT ethnic people, especially South Asians. You know, HIV testing or mental health, depression, suicide, alcohol abuse. There's cases that I'm working with now as well where they're prostituting themselves in the UK as well. That's on the rise. There's sexual abuse, close-knit families, because of Asian culture, the sexual abuse is large, especially for LGBT children, because they are already perceived as being different, and so a lot of LGBT youth are sexually abused. How I've experienced that and seen that. So what can we do about this? So I work with the individuals to build up their self-esteem, empower them, provide space and support. We need more role models who are South Asian. You know, most of my clients are basically focusing on the negative outcome, and they fear they're going to be disowned, forced to marry, and the worst, you know, can happen to them. So we need to empower people to get out there. So every human should have the right to express their own sexual energy. It's not a choice to be LGBT. I mean, spiritually, we need to all align with our true purpose and integrate all our parts of ourselves. When we deny or disown parts of ourselves, we have issues. I asked my social media following what to talk about today, and I was told, one of them is here today as well, all forms of violence, including practices of domestic violence, all forms of violence are domestic violence, and the police needs to respond accordingly. We need specialist support services from LGBT for people of colour. Now I want to talk a bit about India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Our parents that came from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh 50 years ago, they look at old Asia, they came to saw the UK, British Western culture, and they were just shocked, and they were very controlling and very strict to their kids. If we have legal change in these countries back home, it will positively affect the communities here. I work with quite a few LGBT organisations in India, and they say, you know, if we have rights in India, we'll have rights here. So Section 377, which is the old British colonial homophobic laws, they need to be removed. We need legislation for gender equality, especially and sexuality, because rapes in India are epidemic right now. I don't like this whole idea of war against or anti, because how do you tackle homophobia without having a war against it? If you focus on anti-homophobia, or you focus on the word, you're actually focusing on the word homophobia, and you're bringing more of that into your conscious periphery. Because I believe what we focus on grows. So if you focus on the problem, it will multiply. If you focus on the solution, it will improve. So we need to train community leaders to identify their own internalized homophobia. Identify issues, work with the community and local authorities, because a lot of the time this is not even talked about. We need to make it compulsory in schools to talk about these issues, even in faith ones. Now I know the legislation says that, you know, they should talk about being LGBT, but it's not being done at all, because I work with Bernardo's, and with their faith toolkit, they're trying to get into schools. We speak with Stonewall role models and diversity role models, but we are not funded. We go as volunteers, we take off time from our work and spend the whole day doing that. And the government should, if the government can support us, it'd be greatly amazing. So we can tackle things like That's So Gay in schools, because we can't expect role models to fund themselves. I mean, personally myself, I'm on job seekers and I work for free because I'm doing this activism work, and I believe the government should fund activists so we can cultivate and train programs for workshops for LGBT people, maybe have a governing body for LGBT issues, and literature in different languages. And we should also have literature in different languages for domestic violence, definitely. We should have role models on TVs, campaigns. When I lived in Berlin, Germany, on the billboards all around the area, especially in the ethnic areas, like the Turkish areas, they'd have posters of 2 women kissing, 2 men kissing, or holding hands saying, "We exist." Now, if we could have that in Soho Road in Birmingham, it would be amazing. So we, basically, we can have Bollywood role models as well in Bollywood, because it's all stereotypical. Straight allies, I'm very grateful that Gina has invited me today, because if we work together, we're more likely to get things changed. We need integration and inclusion of LGBT issues, including women. Women should be allowed into religious and non-religious areas, and religious organisations and community leaders should know about LGBT issues and forced marriage. We need to take these issues seriously and realise that sexuality is not just about sex. It encompasses a whole totality of who you are, what you've been through and your struggle. And as a society, if we work as a whole and look after one another and educate ourselves and use the resources from the ugly side of beauty road show, we can learn and change this stuff.
of this guy. I think he deserves to go back. Our next speaker.